It's a large compound. It's been added on to and built up over the years since they started. It has a large building that houses some of the quarters for the staff, certainly the guest quarters, a kitchen, places to sit down and eat and spend some time studying, visiting. That's the main building. It also houses a large church. It has a very significant school for kindergarten all the way up through now. They're actually starting some college classes for some of their oldest kids. They have a large medical facility that they've been adding on to over the years. They have a construction shop that has a full woodworking shop, and they have a peanut butter factory. It's amazing. They have gardens. It's almost a self-sustaining facility, and it took all of a week for us to really get around it and understand what all they're supporting from that compound. I'll just go over quickly some of the ministries and some of the portions of HCM that they focus on to affect the Haiti people. One of them is church advancement. We spent time visiting local churches that were started or sponsored by HCM. These churches were usually the center of a village with respect to organization or support, a safe place. One of the only places in some of the villages that could be locked was the church. And we often found ourselves in the church with a local pastor that was supported by HCM during food distribution or some of the humanitarian efforts. Education, they're using education to affect the long-term needs in Haiti by investing in the kiddos. The largest school that I saw was the one on the compound. It was well run. If some of you were on Facebook and you saw the video that was taken of the kids lining up and the principal out, he kind of did it the way that it was done when I was raised. He had a stick or he was using his hand, and if those kids didn't line up and pay attention, they might find themselves on the hurting end of that stick. But they were very attentive, and they were doing what they were supposed to in the mornings to get ready for school. It was pretty neat. The schools are meager by our standards. If you were asked here in Vernal to take your kid to a school that was equipped or looked like some of those schools, you might not. But I'll tell you that they were the finest schools in Haiti. So it just is a stark comparison between what we consider appropriate school atmosphere and what they actually have. But it was some of the best schooling there, much better than the public schools. Medical ministry, at HCM they have a day clinic that's open 5 days a week. They also provide a 24/7 emergency room service. We were able, with the donations we received from this congregation, to outfit the ambulance with new tires, and we also outfitted the ambulance driver with a motorcycle so that he could actually respond to the emergency call when it came in and get there and get in his ambulance and go make the call, because in the past he may not be able to get to the ambulance without just walking from his house. And so they were thrilled with the investment we were able to make in that ministry. The sports ministry is one that they use for promoting education, a healthy lifestyle, and biblical principles. They invest in kids with sports to teach them a better way to live. Nutrition ministry is a really big one at HCM. There's a couple of aspects. One of them is providing immediate relief for people who don't have enough to eat tomorrow or tonight. So we spent a bit of time moving large quantities of rice, beans, oil to people who needed to eat that week, and that was one way we got to be exposed to the very urgent and immediate need of just getting enough to eat. The other thing they have is a peanut butter factory on site in HCM, and they manufacture several different kinds of peanut butter from local ingredients. They sell it at a very much reduced cost or donate it if folks like us come in and are able to buy a lot up. So I think I forget the name of it, they have one peanut butter that's got so many nutrients in it that it could be fed to the very young or the very little or the very small or the very undernourished to help them gain weight quickly. It's almost used as a medical approach to nutrition. They have very They're very focused on sustainability projects. They try to invest in things that make a difference. One thing is taking care of today's needs, but another thing is taking care of needs for people that help them invest in bettering their lives. The examples would be constructing churches, and then the churches would be used to get people to improve their lives in their villages, constructing schools. And when you get a school started somewhere, then you're able to teach kiddos to read and write, teach them about health and hygiene, and teach them a trade, and that changes the long-term need for the Haitian people. Orphanages. We worked with several orphanages that you're going to hear a lot about today that are either directly sponsored or are assisted by HCM, and those obviously take care of a urgent need. It's kids off the street that don't have parents or a home, and then those kids in turn are going to be able to be educated, fed, and taught a skill or a trade so that in the future they can make a change in what's going on in Haiti. One of the things that I was most impressed with, one day we were touring the wood shop, the woodworking shop. We went into a room that was locked, and Miss Betty opened it for us, and on the board, on the chalkboard, were basically a lesson in one of the woodworking projects. And Boss Charles had been in there teaching some young men how to properly measure, cut, build something. It was all drawn out on the board. So there's a lot going on at HCM that makes a long-term difference in the Haitian people. And I loved being able to work alongside somebody that, we did hand out a lot of food, but we were also working alongside people on projects that would make a sustained difference in their life. And that to me was just a rich blessing. I'll wrap it up by saying that it is a very rich experience to be surrounded by people who have devoted their life to Christ's work. And if you're a Christian and you're able to immerse yourself in that, you come away feeling blessed, feeling fired up, feeling convicted about your own faith. And that's exactly what happened with Miss Betty and Pastor Prophet's staff and them personally. One of the things that I think back on every day when I think of Miss Betty, she says, when she welcomed us in, she goes, "You're home." And she was very much right. We felt at home the minute we walked in. The night we sat in Pastor Prophet's in Miss Betty's apartment enjoying a bit of homemade cake. We thanked him for letting us in his home. There were how many of us just flooded in there and we're all kind of gathered in. And he said, "This is not my home." But sure, it's their home. All their stuff is in there. It's where they live. He said, "It's not my home. This is a mission home. It's for missionaries. And it's your home." So that defines and wraps up the experience that we had from HCM during the whole trip. So, thank you all.
Good morning. One of the places that we went was Wholehearted Orphanage. Haiti has a population of 10 million people. Half of the population of Haiti is under the age of 18. 700,000 kids are orphaned, and 1 in 7 will die before the age of 5 because of malnutrition and disease. So the need for accountable orphanages in Haiti are dire. This is the family that lives at Wholehearted at this time. Mary Lee and Paige Zan, with the help from Betty and the HCM family, opened this orphanage in 2010. The mission of Wholehearted Orphanage is to provide safe, loving, Christ-centered environment. Wholehearted has 12 wonderful children living in a family-style environment. The children are parented by Marcelin and Lucia, and also loved by Marcelin's mother. While we were there, we built 2 picnic tables, which is where they eat most of their dinners. When it's warm outside, they also do all of their schoolwork out there on these. We also built some shelving in their food pantry. While we were there, we put some solar lighting out in front of all of their doorways, so in the evenings they could have some light. A lot of times in Haiti, they'll have electricity for 4 or 5 hours a day. The power plant that Gene and I work for out here south of town puts out twice as much electricity as the entire country of Haiti has. So very little electricity in Haiti. The next slide shows you the wall at their new facility. They are building them a new orphanage. The one that they have right now is a rented house. And this one here, they've got about 3 acres. And 2 years ago when we were there, and I remember I didn't make it there the first year, but I remember looking at some of the Tarbell's pictures from them going there. And the wall that was there 2 years ago was exactly the way we found it last year. We were the first group to start building on the wall. The picture you're seeing right now is from last year, and that was us working on the wall. The next slide will show you how it looked during this year, after a lot of the work that we did last year and working back on the same corner that we started with last year. The next slide will show you some of the team that was working there just on one of the days. We worked there 3 different days, and this is a crew of us and them that worked there on that day. The next slide will show you the wall after we had left. About a week after we left, they finished up the last of what we did. The wall you see right there is just the foundation. They will next put, back in that far back corner, which would be the northeast corner, from the ground to what you see there is 20 foot tall. They'll come in and level that ground, and then they will go from having 12 kids in that orphanage to 96 kids in that orphanage, all of them living 12 kids and a set of parents to each house. And they'll have their own little community there. Since last year, they've drilled a well on the property. This week, they're putting in their septic system, and they'll start building the rest of the walls, putting a gate up, and then they'll be able to start building the houses. So this is one of the places that we spend a lot of time at. We love playing with the kids there and interacting with them and the family, and just one of the things that we do while we're there. Thank you.
Ooh, kind of nervous. So a small team of us, well, okay, I'll just read what I have because it's better that way. Pastor Prophet, the founder of HCM, took a small group of us into the mountains to meet with one of his longtime friends named Pastor Crispin Kenold. Pastor Prophet had worked with him for over 20 years until Pastor Kenold went in search of his own calling. He was invited to attend a conference to aid the deaf. He was the only one to attend, so after the conference, they gave him all the materials so he would be able to teach the deaf children American Sign Language. Soon after that, he started the New Jerusalem Orphanage by a river until a tragic accident happened where a 5-year-old child drowned. Afterwards, he moved his orphanage to a safer location. The location has no water available and has to be brought in. The water has to be brought in using buckets, and that water is used for drinking, bathing, cooking. Currently, the orphanage that he runs houses 35 children that were abandoned. 30 of these kids are deaf. Without the help of Pastor Kenold, these children would be uneducated and forced into slavery, working all day without receiving a proper meal. They would only get to eat the leftover scraps from their owners. Pastor Kenold is not receiving any outside help to fund his orphanage. And as we left, he hugged each one of us and whispered in our ear, "Please don't forget us." This is where our congregation comes in. We have found a way to help not only Pastor Kenold, but also HCM and local farmers. HCM currently has a peanut butter factory, and the peanuts used come from local farmers. It costs $200 a month for 6 gallons of peanut butter. Our commitment is to send 6 gallons of peanut butter a month. We will not forget the New Jerusalem Orphanage.
So, I'm talking today about the importance of prayer. Yes, that's okay. I'm talking today about the importance of prayer. And we were praying lots and lots in Haiti. And when I say praying, I mean two things. I mean, the first thing, what we all think of, talking to God, asking for forgiveness, thanking Him, and praising Him. But the second thing that I mean is what we call in Haiti horizontal praying. And we prayed a lot in Haiti. We prayed multiple times a day, and if you were Luke, you horizontally prayed multiple times an hour. The first verse that I would like to share with you guys about praying is 1 Thessalonians 5:17, and it's pray without ceasing. Like I said, we were constantly praying in Haiti. We were praying for those less fortunate, struggling people, Christians and non-Christians, and each other. And the more that we prayed, the more I started to understand that in a lot of ways, God is like your friend, because He's on your side like a friend should be. He stands by you through the good and the bad. And most of all, the more you talk to Him, the more your relationship will grow. The second verse I'd like to share with you guys is Isaiah 55:6. Seek the Lord while He may be found. Call on Him while He is near. And the reason that I chose this verse is because we went to a village across the lake, and if I'm correct, in the past years we've had rowboats that we've had to go on. But this year we had essentially a rowboat with a motor on the back, and we were pretty pumped about that because we didn't have to row it this year. And so finally, all 17 of us are on the boat. We got all of the 50-pound bags of beans and rice loaded on, and the motor won't start. So we wait there for about 5 minutes. We're trying to get the motor to start, and it just won't. And finally it does. And in Haiti, we do this thing, it's kind of a celebration where someone yells, "We PP," and then everyone yells, "Way." And as soon as the motor started, Julie yells, "We PP," and we say, "Wait," and then the engine cuts off. And, we wait like 15 minutes more, and the engine still isn't starting. And then Lisa has the bright idea of, "Hey guys, why don't we pray?" And not within 2 seconds, the engine starts. And that was amazing to me, and it really stuck with me because Lisa was saying afterwards, "Guys, we didn't even need to pray about it. We just needed to talk about praying about it." And that was amazing to me because it kind of showed me that even if your prayers are silent, oh wow, even if your prayers are silent, and God still hears your call for help, and He still sees your struggle. And my third and last point that I wanted to make is that, I lost it, is that we live by faith, not by sight, which is 2 Corinthians 5:7. And I chose this for a number of reasons. We went to a place called Hope House, which is an orphanage, and Eve Rose is kind of in charge of the orphanage. And these Haitians, that's the founder of HTM. His name's Etienne. Yeah, and Sammy got the best selfie with him. But the Haitians, they aren't able to rely on the things that we are, like money and electricity and running water and having food constantly on your table. And Eve Rose doesn't always have food for her kids or food for herself, and she took us to the wall one day. She packed all 17 of us into one van, and we went to this wall, and she was telling us that if a family or a group of kids comes up to her and doesn't have food and they ask her for food, she will give them the food that her kids would have eaten tomorrow. And we asked her, how do you do this? How are you able to have this much faith and that God will be by your side? And she said, I don't pray about it. I have faith that He will provide for us, and I have faith that He will be near us. And Eve Rose has undeniable faith. It's amazing. And she is the physical example of living by faith and not by sight. And I'm sure it's because she's had so many years of prayer. And she doesn't know where her next meal is coming from or if her hungry kids will eat this day, but she has faith that God will make it happen. And to leave you with one thing, prayer brings you closer to God in more ways than one. It deepens and strengthens your relationship, and if you pray as much as Luke, your relationship with God will be pretty good. So.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks. Okay, so I'm Tina, and I was one of the people who was in charge of the VBS that we did. I was in charge of telling the Bible story that we told there. And VBS stands for Vacation Bible School, and we did about, how many did we do? 4, 6, yeah. We did about 6 vacation Bible schools. In the VBS, we would usually start off with singing, which usually meant the kids singing to us, unless we knew the songs, which was sometimes pretty rare. But we would also provide snacks most of the time, which would be just crackers and a small little bag of water for each of the kids. We would also sometimes do a craft with them, which was a macaroni and bead bracelet, which was super fun for them. It was just a really fun way to interact with them. And then we would tell the Bible story, and that was what I was in charge of. This year's story was the story of Noah, and it was a lot of fun because we decided we wanted the kids to act it out with us. And so we would give them little animal masks, and we would appoint a Noah person to use his hammer and build an ark, and they would go under the doors, which were usually Trudy and Sarah. And as you can see in that picture, they just loved it a lot. It was really awesome. And my main points of the story was I wanted to show them how much Noah loved God and how he took his faith and he did the unbelievable even when it was crazy to do, and how God promised to save him and he did. But my main point was pretty much sharing the gospel and saying this is how much Noah loved God, and God wants all of us to do the same thing to him. And I would end it by asking if any of the kids would want to accept Christ as their Savior. And that turned out to be actually very successful. At each VBS, we had kids come up, and I'm sure some of them just wanted to come up. Maybe some of them were rededicating, but we at least knew of a few who were very serious about this, who wanted to accept Christ as their Savior. So that was absolutely amazing to help those kids take that next step and have a really good faith with Christ. And it was just a lot of fun to do it. There's just pictures of us with the kids up there, and we would just get to play with them afterwards and hang out and really just let them be kids and have them laugh all day with us. It was really awesome. Just for us, at the end, we would pray for the kids who came up, and we would just ask God to be with their faith, to really be with these kids, because these kids live in such hard lives. So we would pray with them afterwards. And we ended up doing VBS at one village, at Rapha House, and at 4 different schools. I told the story of Noah 6 times, with Emma telling it once when I was unavailable. So I'm not the biggest fan of speaking in front of people. I'm really shaky up here right now. And even though I was speaking in front of kids, which I'm a lot more comfortable with, I was still extremely nervous. I had just pretty much signed myself up when we asked who wanted to do the story, and I wasn't nervous until a couple days before. And before we were leaving, I was freaking out. I was wondering, why did I accept this job? Like, I can't do this. This is crazy. I don't tell Bible stories. I never have. And even though I knew this was a VBS, it was fun. I was with kids. I was just extremely, extremely nervous. And I was really worried that I would mess up and not say what God wanted me to say. But God heard my prayers. I was praying and praying a few days before, and he answered them. One of my first worries was just dealing with the interpreter. I was worried that maybe I would speak too much and he wouldn't know what I would say, or I would speak too little, and I just was really worried about how I would do that. But God really sent me a blessing there, because he had Miss Betty be my interpreter most of the time. Miss Betty, one of the founders of HCM, so she knows what she's doing. So she was really awesome to be my interpreter, and she was actually the one who suggested asking the kids to come up and accept Jesus as their Savior, which made the story 10 times better. The first full day I was there, I told the Bible story 3 times, and the original plan was that we were going to go to a village across a lake, and it was going to be the whole team, and I was kind of freaking out because I was really worried about telling my story in front of the whole team, because, like I said, I'm a lot more comfortable speaking in front of kids, but when adults are there, it's really stressful, and I was worried that I would mess up, and my team would be like, dang, why'd we choose Tina to do this? Bad idea. So God really answered that, because the plans changed, and I got to tell the story in just little classrooms with half my team watching, and with small amounts of kids, and it really, really boosted my confidence of doing it. And just telling the story 3 times that first day really helped me to get familiar with the story, get familiar of what I wanted to do with it. And that was just a huge, huge answered prayer that God provided me. And then I was also kind of worried about how the kids would want to interact with us. I mean, I knew some of them would be excited about acting out Noah, but I was kind of worried that maybe they wouldn't like it, maybe it'd be hard to get them to do what I wanted them to do, but they loved it. The first Bible stories I did, there were so many volunteers, they wanted to do it so badly, and that really boosted my confidence in doing it too. So in all, it was just really amazing to be able to tell the Bible story, to share the gospel to these kids. But overall, it was amazing to see how God answered my prayers, answered how nervous I was, and took every little thing that I was nervous and made it to his glory and made it better so that this VBS would really take off. So, thank you.
Okay. My name is Lisa, and I'm a registered nurse. Allie Beth and I, am I too loud? Let's back up just a little bit. Okay. Allie Beth and I worked in the clinic Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, and Friday morning. Mostly blood pressures and temperatures, and we weighed people and stuff like that. Allie Beth was awesome. She jumped right in. She's currently taking CNA classes, and she just jumped right in like she'd been doing this for 40 years, and she's not even 40 years old. So, but anyway, she did great. She's awesome. I'm glad she was able to do that. So we did that on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday mornings. We worked in their clinic. We saw people that typically can be seen here in Vernal. Had a lot of high blood pressure. We had some pregnant women, which I didn't want to touch and have anything to do with because I don't do babies. And we saw a large variety of people. Men, women, older people. There was a lot of older people that came in with different ailments. We also we had a mobile clinic in a very poor refugee village across the lake from where we were staying. And I was actually seeing patients like a doctor. That was way out of my comfort zone because if I didn't have my iPhone with my Micromedex, my drug book on it, I'd have been lost. I'd have been going, I'm not any use here. But actually, I think I did. I was of some use. And I hope I was anyway. We saw lots of people there that complained of their belly hurting. And I had an interpreter with me. A majority of them were complaining about their stomach hurting. They had reflux. Joe Bear said, he's my interpreter, about halfway through the day, we saw about 89 patients that day. And he goes, you know, a lot of these people that are complaining of their stomach hurting, their stomach's hurting because they're hungry. And I'm just like, you know, what do you say when somebody says that? You know, and I'm just like, so what kind of prescription do I write? You know, what do we do? You know, we brought them rice and beans, but how long was that going to last? We're just putting a Band-Aid on their bellyache. You know, how can we help them in the future? That's where you guys come in. There's ways that you can, you know, help fund these people so that they can not go hungry. One of the things, whenever we first got there, we had to go on the boats, and this guy went and stole one of the bags of rice, and everybody was going. And I got to thinking about that. You know, how many of us, you know, first thing, I don't know, if I was going to steal something, it wouldn't have been a bag of rice, you know. But that's what they valued, you know. They don't have food like you and I do. So that was what was most important to him. The other thing I wanted to just read, we were encouraged to keep a journal. And this is my entry from the day when we got back home. It was Tuesday, and I'll read this real quick so we don't go over time here. Back home. Looked yesterday at all the things we have here. TV, computer, internet, a cold refrigerator, electricity, nice clothes, shoes, washer, dryer, and the list goes on. Don't have that stuff in Haiti. It's a sad place with sad people. Wait! Exclamation mark. Not all are sad. Those that have accepted Jesus Christ as their personal Savior, sing His praises. Hum while they're at work. Hum His songs. Give Him the glory. How can that be in such a place? Question mark. How can they not dwell on the bad, sad things? Because they have given Him, God, complete control of all things. They know that what He said in His Word, that He will provide all your needs. They have shelter and food and water and love, and that's all they need. Thank you, Jesus, for their example of faith. May I have half the faith that they do, praying that I would learn from them. Thank you.
As the student minister here, I just have to put a quick plug in for my teenage students, because I am so proud and shocked that we took 4 teenagers down to Haiti. And you heard from Tina and Emma. Yeah, clap for them. They deserve it. We heard from Tina and Emma, and Mark's kids, Allie, Beth, and Luke, went along with us. And I scared to go. Like a week before the trip, when we had canceled once and then recommitted to going, I was scared. And just to see these four just go and follow and believe in God and go down there was just amazing. Tina was just the best possible VBS leader ever. And I really enjoyed just getting to see her step up and do that. And I have funny stories about all of them. Luke taking communion. If you get a chance, ask him. And Allie Beth and I were going to play worship in church, and we were practicing the night before, and we didn't have music or anything, so we start playing, we think we can get this song down, and I say this key, and she starts like writing it out, and then I change it. And I'm like, I actually go up another key, and so she's writing it all down, and we change it, and there was like 4 or 5 times we changed it. She just never got to practice because she was writing the whole time, and it was great. And I 2 minutes before we got back home, got a picture of Emma praying. So it wasn't in there, but she was praying. But what I want to tell you all about is when we went down for 2 primary things. As we wanted to feed some physical needs and we wanted to feed some spiritual needs. And so the easiest way we were able to do that was with food distribution. So here's just some pictures of the bags of rice and beans we had. Thanks to your all donations, I think we spent like $3,000 on all of this rice, beans, and oil is in those boxes that we were able to hand out to people. And we wanted to go down, and we did. We wanted to be able to bring them food. And so we took those bags, and we broke them up into smaller bags. And what that ended up for each person or even a family sometimes, depending on how much we had to give, was they got just a real small bag of rice, just a sandwich-sized bag of beans, and a little bottle of oil. That's all we were able to give out. And so we took those big bags and broke them down so that we could evenly distribute it everywhere we went. We brought food to the orphanages, to the villages that we were headed down to. We brought food. And here's another picture of just those rice and beans. And we hauled those things around everywhere with us, and so we took them, and most of the time we took a box truck, and that box truck was one way we got to some of the closer villages, and we just threw everything in the back. When we got there, we had to haul it around. Sometimes we took a boat, and so you'll hear Trudy talk more about our Village of Faith, but that's that boat just loaded up with all that food. And the thing that got me with the village across the lake is we set up a medical clinic, and we wanted to do the VBS, and we wanted to do all of that before we gave out the food. And we kind of relied on Betty and the pastor at that church to do it that way, but people would wait all day, 3 or 4 hours, just for this small bag of rice and beans and a little bit of oil. And I shared this with my students of just how immediate we are. If we get hungry, we go to the cupboard and start grazing and snacking. If we don't have food, we go to Walmart or Smith's. If we're in a rush, we go through a drive-thru, and in 2 minutes, if we don't get our food, we start getting impatient. And they were waiting 4 hours for a meal. And kind of breaks your heart, because you wish you could give them each a huge bag so that you would be like, I got them through a week or 2 of good eating. But they had that bag for sometimes their whole family. And maybe even they could make that last a couple days if they rationed it. Just kind of breaks your heart. While we were there at the village across the lake, they were feeding students. They push so much for the kids to go to school because at schools they get lunch. And so Monday through Friday they'll at least get 1 meal a day. And so parents will push it as much as they can for their kids to go to school. And while they're there at school, they get an education and they get to hear about God. But we had the privilege of just being able to serve them the food. I don't know if the teachers did it every day or just because we were there, we did it. But we just got to serve them a plate of food. And this is just a couple of the kids eating, and half of the class didn't even have a fork. And so I was watching one row, and I don't know if it was these 3 kids or another 3 boys, but one would take a bite, pass the fork. Take a bite, pass the fork. Take a bite, pass it back. Some were just eating with their hands because it was warm food and they were hungry. It was cool to see. It was way cool to see. But we also wanted to go down to fill spiritual needs. And the cool thing was to see those needs being filled on both sides of the trip, theirs and ours. Everywhere we went, every time we handed out food, we prayed over them. And this is just a picture of our elder Drex praying over a group of ladies. Most of the time we gave it to just the women, and the women would take it back to their husbands and family and children. And we prayed for them. And it was cool that they prayed back most of the time. And other groups of Haitians prayed for us. And really, the coolest part about being down there for me was the worship. I'm kind of all about worship. Worship is one of my spiritual gifts. It's where I really connect with God. And we went down, and we had the pleasure and privilege to be able to worship in church on a Sunday morning with the Haitians just there at HCM. And so this is us. Betty invited us to be up on stage and play. And so we had like an hour of practice the night before, threw something together, and it was Allie Beth, me, Julie, Emma, and Lisa. And they just sat there and got to listen to the next two songs we're going to play, and we're going to worship together. And they knew the second one. And they were singing along, and we were singing. And when we weren't up on stage, they had a band of their own playing piano and a drum kit, and they were singing and worshiping. And it's so hard to explain because there's this language barrier, and you just wish, like, you think you can get it. And like me and Lisa the whole time were playing like Guess That Hymn and like trying to figure out what they were singing. And I got the doxology. They sang the doxology at the end, and I knew it. And so that was like 10 seconds I was able to sing with them. But it was awesome. It was awesome just to be surrounded by that and hear them. And we went to Hope House, one of the orphanages, on 2 different nights. And Eve Rose worships with them every single morning for an hour. They do a Wednesday night worship and a Saturday night worship. And so we went on Wednesday and Saturday night. And we got there kind of late on Wednesday, but Saturday night we got the full effect. And it was just an hour long, but we walk up and there's just this joyous noise. Krista, would you play this video? Because I want you to hear it. And that's 30 kids just singing and joining along together. Eve Rose wasn't even there because she was talking with Drex. And these are just her kids and her family. And they are just singing these praises, leading themselves. And you couldn't notice it by the sound. But we got there Wednesday, and Julie was like, you guys should play a song. And I walk up, and they had a drum set, and the heads were just broke and popped and split, and they're just playing on the rim if they can get some sound. I pick up their guitar, and the tuning forks didn't even work, and the strings are just tied on there. They're just not even tight. The keyboard, Allie Beth could tell you about it, don't have a clue how they were able to get sound out of it. But they're making this joyous music with what we would think needs to be replaced. We would buy a new guitar, a new drum set right away. They had the picture back there. It was just like it looked like just a section of rain gutter or something. It was just a metal kind of casing, and he was just strumming along and playing it like a percussion instrument. And it was amazing just to hear this sound of them worshiping. And that 20-second clip, I'm not even lying, that was a 45-minute song. We get there at 7 o'clock, right when they started. We come in and we hear the music, and we get down there, and it's kind of fast beat, and they're clapping along, and we're clapping along, and 10 minutes goes by, and I look over at Gene, and we're sweating, and then it picks up pace, and they're like double time singing, and I'm like, okay, this is the end. They're like just building it up. It was 45 minutes long. Yeah, and they're just singing and praising, and I'm like, oh man, I sit down, get back up, sit down, get back up. Can't do it. And then in the last 15 minutes, they just went all a cappella and just were singing their hearts out. And you could just tell how much emotion they put into it. And it got me thinking about worship. And so I want to read you this scripture from Hebrews. It's Hebrews 13:15. It says, "Through him then let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name." Amen. And that's what they were doing. And as I got to thinking about it, that's what we need to do. And we do. And we need to keep doing it. And we need to do it every day and every second of our life. It was amazing just to hear them worship and to be a part of a 45-minute song. But sometimes that's all they have to offer God. We take up offering every week because the Bible tells us to give a tithe. And we hold strongly to that we give back to God with our tithe, with our offerings. But what if you don't have money? What if maybe sometimes you don't have time? What about your words? What about your worship? I mean, all they had over in Haiti was their faith. They don't have food for the next day, but they would be out there singing every single night praises to God. When we were staying at HCM, several church bands would come and practice. And while we're just sitting out there on the porch, they would just be singing praises. And we'd go to Hope House and they'd be singing praises. And we'd go to church and they're singing praises. And we're working on this wall and we're singing praises. And it was so cool to be a part of that. For me, that's what I got to take away. How badly does God want to hear from our lips his name? To glorify and praise him.
Acts 20:35, it's more blessed to give than to receive. There we go. And we found that to be true on our trip. And in Luke 6:38, it says, "Give and it will be given to you, in good measure, pressed down, shaken, and running over," which to me says you get back more than you give. You get back a lot more than what you give. Brent said to me on the trip, he said, we got the better part of the trade because we got much more than we gave. And I think if you quizzed our team to a person, every one of them would say that we were the recipients. We're the ones that got the better part of the trade. And that's certainly true for me. I'm going to take a little different angle today and talk about just what I got out of the trip personally for myself. And that's one of many things, or a few of many things. But that's the part of the trade that I got where I came out ahead. The first thing is, if you ever want to have a birthday and you can choose where to have it, the best place to have it is in Haiti, because somehow when you arrive in a group of people, they know it's your birthday. And I don't know if there was like somebody had a Post-it note on my back or something, but they knew ahead of time it was my birthday. And so I had 6 or 8 times different groups of people saying happy birthday to me, and that was really cool. But the coolest was at the Hope House, and hopefully the video will play and you'll get to see what a happy birthday is like from Hope House in Haiti. Now that was cool, but it's even cooler when you know what it means. And that whole business with the way, that was them wishing me years of blessings to heaven. That was cool. I've never had a birthday sung to me like that before. But hopefully it's a new standard that people will stretch towards, because I really like that. Either that or I'll just have to spend every birthday in Haiti from now on, which so far I'm 2 for 2. Another cool and unintended blessing I got out of this trip was I got to know my congregation right here. We had 20 people that some of them I knew casually, I guess, not real well. Some of them, Trudy, Felicia, Lisa, and Brent, I'll be honest, I didn't even know their names. I knew their faces, but I did not know their names. So that tells you how little I knew some of my congregation. And 10 days of living in a third world country in the same rooms and eating dinner together and praying together and worshiping together, you get to know people pretty well. And so one great thing I got out of this is I got to know these people, which is a decent percentage of our congregation here, really well. And I feel closer to this church because I did that. And so that was a blessing for me. Shouldn't have to go 6,000 miles to get to know your church, but it's rare that we spend 10 days with each other every waking moment, and that's what happened when we were on this trip. So the fellowship of our team was a blessing to me, getting to spend time in worship and prayer and reading the scriptures. But this whole trip for me was a sort of revival, to use an old word, or a fresh encounter. And again, you shouldn't have to go 6,000 miles for a fresh encounter. But that's just how it went down. I'm telling you how it went down. And that's what happened for me. And like Mark said, I actually wrote the word saturated with people of faith, but he used the word immersed, which I think is an even better word. So I was immersed in the fellowship of our group, but also the people in Haiti. And their faith, not everybody, but a lot of people, their faith is just amazing. And in fact, I wrote in my journal, it seemed like a really strange thing to write, but I wrote that I was jealous of their faith. It's not a competition, right? But I looked at their faith was just so complete. Everything that happens, that they turn it over to God. And I'm not quite there. So it was inspiring to me to be around people of that much faith. So that helped me a lot. Let's see. So I'll finish with this. One thing I struggle with, and maybe I'm the only one, I don't know, but I get hung up on me and things I have going on, and think I'm a big shot, or that I have important things, or things that I need to worry about. And there was a moment, actually it was after the 45 minutes of singing and before the happy birthday, right in between there was sandwiched a moment where these young people prayed for us. And they put their hands on us, maybe 1 or 2 or 3. And so I had 2 young people put their hands on me and pray for me. They prayed out loud in Haitian Creole. And maybe you had to be there to feel what I felt. But it struck me in that moment that we could not be at more extremes in our stations in life. Now, I'm an American, I speak English. They're Haitian, they speak Creole. Different race, different country. They're 30 years younger than me. And yet, when they were praying for me, it occurred to me that their prayer means just as much as my prayer. Maybe more. Maybe more. And so that, for me, was a humbling experience that I'll never forget. Thank you.
everybody's papers. Okay. My goal is to get through this without doing a Mary Ann. Sorry, Mary Ann. You know how it is. You got a lot to say. It's hard. My name's Diane, and I'm going to talk about Rapha House. Rapha House is a safe house for girls who have been trafficked and sexually abused. The house provides safety, medical care, education, and most importantly, a Christian home where these girls learn about Christ's love. And VCC has been a supporter of Rapha House since its beginning. It started in Cambodia, and now there's 2 houses in Cambodia, one in Thailand and one in Haiti. Rapha House in Haiti last year opened up just before we'd gotten there, and this is a picture from their grand opening. Stephanie's in the center. She's the founder and the director of Rapha House. And then Heather is on the right. She's Heather and her husband. They're the Haitian directors. And it opened just before we'd gotten there. And we were a bit nervous because we were really the first group to go visit. There were 11 girls at that time, and we're the first visitors. They're all pretty new and never had visitors before, but luckily it went really well last year. This year, we almost didn't make it to Rapha House. They were supposed to be moving at the time when we were visiting. The house that they're in now is rented, and they were going to have to move out of it. But about 3 weeks before we were leaving, we were told by Heather, oh, we're not moving, you can come. So it was a quick scramble to get our background investigations, our background checks done, and get our schedule together with Rapha House so we could get it in. And then our trip was canceled. And of course I told Heather that. And then it was back on. And then it's like, can we get back in the schedule? And then Heather, she's pregnant, and she decided before we got there that she was going to come to the U.S. because of the Zika virus and spend the rest of her pregnancy here in the U.S. So she wasn't even going to be there. So needless to say, our trip was a little bit more chaotic than I'd planned. The Rapha House is a really nice house. It's in a very secure location. Unfortunately, it takes about 2 hours for the staff members to get there. I don't have any pictures of our time at Rapha House. No pictures are allowed because of safety for the girls. When we arrive, the first thing is we get kind of a security briefing and a list of don'ts, things we can't do. And this is all for the girls' safety. When we went in the house, the girls greeted us with a song. That was really cool. And at that point, we split up, and most of the guys headed to the kitchen to start lunch. And the rest of us went with the girls, and Tina did her Bible study, or her Bible story, and we sang a couple songs. At that point, we had Gerson interpret, but then he's busy, especially with Heather not there. He's multitasking, so he kind of wandered off. So we just kind of sat down on the floor and did the best we could, making our craft. We made bracelets with some beads, and we were having a pretty good time. One point I want to make is not all the girls were there at this point. There's 19 girls at Rapha House right now, and 3 of them can now go to a local school. They're probably not in their appropriate age group grade, but at least they're able to go to the school. The rest of the girls are still trying to get caught up with basics of education at Rapha House. Remember, most of them have never been to school before. And so those girls came while we were making the bracelets. And I have a story to tell you. And this is actually Sarah's story, but she's allowing me to tell you. There's this one girl that was at school, and she has a son. And last year when we went, he was only a few months old. She had had that baby while she was on the streets of Port-au-Prince. She had that baby by herself on the streets. 15, 16 years old, by herself. Can you imagine? I remember her as being kind of quiet, timid, shy. This year she sat down by Sarah and she said, I can't remember your name. Can you tell me your name again? And so Sarah tells her name and Sarah asks hers. And then she says, have you been praying for us? Have you been praying to come back to visit us? And Sarah said, yes, I've been praying. She says, I've been praying all year that you guys would come back to visit us. I thought that was pretty awesome. And a little while later she says, is your best friend with you? And Sarah says, Well, we're all really good friends. We know each other really well. And says, well, who's your best friend? And without hesitation, she replies, Jesus is my best friend. And my son, too. That poor boy, we, of course, picked him up right away again, and we're playing with him, and he was a little bit overwhelmed by all these strangers, white people playing with him. Anyway, after that, we had lunch. I said that the guys had gone off to make lunch, and first we'd made that arrangement because it's really awkward and uncomfortable for the guys to be at Rapha House. But actually, them going to make lunch turned into a blessing. Remember that most of the abuse that these girls experience is at the hands of men, and I'm sorry to say that, but that's reality. So the guys went up to make lunch to kind of just work their way into the house. But here they are, they're making these girls a lunch, and then they serve them. Do you think that's ever happened to them before? That a man would make her a meal and serve it to them? So what a great way to honor those girls. After that, it's time to play. That's my favorite part. For a day, these girls get to forget about their trauma and just play. For a day, they can just have fun and just be a girl. They sang us some songs. They danced for us. I'm sure it was a big treat for them. Who do they get to play for and show to? The best part, we didn't have an interpreter, but we had 3 teenage girls with us, right? Okay, they maybe didn't speak each other's languages, but they speak teenage. So here these teenage girls are able to dance, sing, do those things that those teenagers do. It was great. I mean, how awesome is that? That was such a blessing. Remember, there's no cameras allowed, so I don't have any pictures, but that also means that we didn't hold back. I found out Amy can play basketball in a skirt. And of course, Drex had to fix the basketball to play basketball with, so. There's lots of dancing. A lot of us were dancing. Lisa can dance. The Frisbees, big hit, once again, always. In fact, the Frisbees turned into some sort of skipping game. And I'm pretty sure that every guy on our trip was playing the skipping game. I would look over and they'd be skipping along these Frisbees. I don't think they knew what they were doing. And we had a great time. It was loud. Last year, I remember us having to be, when we were out to play, hold it down, be quiet. We're not sure of our neighbors. We don't want to bring attention to ourselves. They must have just scrapped that because, we were laughing, we were singing. There was a speaker outside with music. We were loud, and we had a great time. And of course, once again, Betty had to drag us out of there, just like last year. Before we left, we had a staff devotion that was led by Julie. Those staff members are truly amazing, and I need to tell you about one. The girls call her Madame. I don't know if she's a counselor or a social worker, but she is God-sent. Madame loves these girls. She can reach inside them, and she helps them to open up. She gets them to express themselves. She gets them to sing and dance and play. Those girls absolutely love her, and I'm not sure they've ever had the opportunity to love someone like they love Madame. That whole staff at Rapha House is amazing. They are totally committed to Rapha House. Remember I mentioned that the house, though the location is secure, it's really hard for the staff to get there. It takes them, some of them, 2 hours to get there. So they get up early, they get there, then they get home at night, they get home really late, and they have families too, and yet they're doing this every day. And this isn't a job for them. This is a commitment. They are truly there for those girls. When those girls go into those dark places, which I'm sure happens frequently, when they go there, that staff member goes with them to that dark place. And they take it personal. They're hurting when these girls are hurting. In Haiti, most, if not all, the girls at Rapha House have been in part of some sort of voodoo ritual. Voodoo is really big in Haiti. And so all the girls have been cut. And they have scars from those cuts. One girl is covered with scars from human bite marks from voodoo. It's one thing to hear about Rapha House and be saddened by the need for Rapha House, but to meet the girls, learn her name, hold her hand, sing a song with her, that just breaks your heart. And God intended it to break our hearts. I'm grateful that God gave me the chance to go to Haiti, to go to Rapha House, and have my heart broken. I'm going to ask you that you pray for these girls at Rapha House. Pray for strength and healing, and also pray for that staff. They need that strength too. Thank you.
There's a bunch of you. Well, first off, I want to just thank the church and the community for all the contributions you guys made, both materially and financially, for our trip. And most of all, I just want to thank you for the prayers that you lifted us up with before and while we were there. It was needed, and we definitely felt it. I'd never been on a mission trip before, never wanted to go on a mission trip before. I've heard missionaries, growing up and thinking, oh, that's neat, but that's way, way out of my comfort zone. And I've kind of gotten to where I like my comfort zone and didn't want to get out of it. It's funny the way the Lord starts to change your heart. And Lisa and I started talking about doing this trip this year, and the next thing we know, we're going. And you've got these preconceived notions, these images in your head of what it's going to be like and what it's going to look like. And I talked to Drex and other team members that have been there before, and they'd kind of told me a little bit about what to expect. And you think you're kind of ready for it, and then you step out of the airport and pack into a van, and then you get to drive through Port-au-Prince. And all those preconceived notions you had and images in your mind, they're gone. It's just, it's hard to explain. You leave Miami nice and comfortable on a jet airplane, and you fly for 2 hours, and you go from the richest, most affluent country in the world to the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And it's unless you've been there, it's just hard to imagine what it's like. As we were driving through Port-au-Prince on the way to Fond Parisienne, I'm sitting next to Drex, and I'm sure my eyes looked like silver dollars and my head was on a swivel, because you're just watching, it's like chaos going through the streets. It's 2-lane street, but they use both lanes in the middle and the sidewalks. And you're wondering how anybody survives it. And over the course of the week, I almost felt like I was embarrassed. You see so many people that have absolutely nothing in the way of material possessions, and yet you see so many of them that are just absolutely trusting in the Lord for everything that they've got, and their faith is so strong. When we go through McDonald's and don't get a straw with our Coke and get upset, and it just makes it feel so, sometimes you feel so petty. Had somebody ask me kind of what was my goal for the trip, and I'm like, I don't know, serve the Lord, give my Sunday school answer. And I think it was a couple weeks before we left, we were showing a kind of a slideshow, kind of as a preview of the trip, and there was one slide that came across the screen, and it just showed a little Haitian child reaching up to one of the team members to be held, and that it just hit me right in the heart. And it was like the Lord was saying, you're going there to love those kids and to love those people and to show them my love. And there were no shortage of kids to love on, let me tell you. We went to Hope House, I'm not sure what day it was, second or third day. The orphanage was founded after the big earthquake that killed so many. A lot of the kids lost all their family there. I think Eve Rose got 31 or 32 kids that they're raising there. Then they've got the school, and I believe they average on daily basis about 450 kids that come in. And a lot of those kids come in there because, as one of the teams said earlier, that's the only meal that they can count on getting that day. A lot of them will hike 4 or 5 miles out of the hills at the beginning of the week, and they'll stay there all week. They get educated, they get fed once a day, and they're getting to hear the gospel and witness God's love. And then at night, a lot of them have to go up and sleep up in the hills in the brush because there's nowhere for them. And it's just, we think of everything we've got and how so often we're just kind of clueless and not really grateful for what we've got. And it really kind of brings it into focus. We got to Hope House. We went in, and Eve Rose came out and met us. Hugged us. They were just so genuinely excited to see us. All the kids came out, and the boys came up, and they'd shake your hand, and the little girls would give you a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and it just melts your heart. And we all eventually ended up down on the playground, just kind of a gravel playground with a jungle gym. And if you closed your eyes, you'd think you're across here at the school listening to the kids there play. Kids are kids. And they're going, and pretty soon they've got us out there running and chasing them, and they about ran me in the ground up the jungle gym and across, down the slide. And after a while, you just got to sit down. And as soon as you sit down, you've got kids in your lap. You're covered up. They just want the attention. They want the love. And I was laughing. Allie Beth and Emma and Tina were sitting down there, and they're just a mob of little girls with them, and they're just braiding their hair, and it was just precious to watch them, just watch the interaction. And one of the kids threw the Frisbee up on the roof, and next thing you know, Drex is up the wall and on the roof, and they figured, hey, we can train him. They had him up and down the wall and up on the roof several times. We got to go back. We've already shared a little bit. We went back one night, and we were still a half a block away from the compound, and you could hear this singing, and I'm thinking, what is that? I didn't have a clue what was going on. And we drove up and got there, and they were already going. They were in full voice, holding nothing back. Eve Rose was leading those kids, and they were singing, and just absolutely praising the Lord and holding nothing back. And I just kind of sat back and watched and was just in awe. And it was just amazing to see God work through through all those kids and through the staff. And then one thing that Eve Rose had told us is she's got enough money to provide food for the kids for about half the month. And then the rest of the month, they're living totally on faith that the Lord's going to provide and feed those kids. And I think, as Emma said, they had one family showed up one night with a couple of kids, and the father asked if Eve Rose could feed his kids because they hadn't eaten in several days. And all she had food was through the next day, and she didn't hesitate. I remember she said, how can I not feed them when I've got provisions right now to take care of their hunger? She says, tomorrow will take care of itself. The Lord will provide. And we just saw that day in and day out while we were there. And as other team members have already expressed, I think we got as much or more of a blessing from being there as the people that we were lucky enough to be able to serve. So thanks for all you guys did for enabling us to go.
I'm the emotional one of the group. So they all knew I would cry. I'm kind of going off what Jean did, going off of what I got out of it. When we first got to Haiti, Julie asked everybody individually what we expect to get out of the trip. And mine was to open my eyes, to see people in need that you could never imagine. Knowing that we would go to villages, orphanages, schools, and Rapha House, I felt I needed my eyes open to the world. We'd go around the team and we would say our word of the day. Mine was always love. I loved the adults, I loved the kids, and I just knew that the kids needed loved and to be kids again too. I loved our team, and I loved the scenery, even though it mostly was just dirt and rocks. There was a lot of beautiful things there as well. I even loved the boat ride.
On that boat, we packed enough food for 200 families and medical supplies and 23 people on that boat. It wouldn't start for a while, like Emma was saying, but nobody feared. That was the funny part, was that we all just enjoyed the moment. There was times Drex, he would say, "I'll tell your family how you died. I'm taking pictures." But we all just enjoyed it. So when we were talking about wanting to talk about our trip, God laid on my heart about the village across the lake. That one was a hard one for me. We did a VBS medical clinic of 89 patients, like Lisa said, and a food distribution of 200 families. But there was something at that village that needed my word to not only change, but to add to love. And it was compassion. So there was one day that I just took time for myself and went and just read the Bible and just did some research that I needed to do. The Latin meaning of compassion is to suffer with. Mark 6:34, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Compassion, to see the suffering of another and to suffer with them. It's seeing someone in pain or despair and having the desire to relieve it. It's an action to do something for another who is in need and not enough just to feel bad. 1 John 3:17 through 18. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Compassion. It challenges us to cry out with those in misery, to mourn with those who are lonely, to weep with those who are in tears. It asks us to go where it hurts, to enter into places of pain, to share in brokenness. It may be uncomfortable, messy, difficult, and inconvenient. However, it will have incredible value. Before I left, I had some people tell me, and I heard people talking about how we always go to Haiti. And this was my first trip to Haiti, but how we always go to Haiti and how can we make a big difference if we keep going. But I promise you it makes a big difference for those people every time we come. And not just for one person, but for many. So how do I go from here is my question. The Bible tells me in Matthew 6:33, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all things will be given to you as well. So I need to put God first always. I need to turn to him for help, and he will provide the direction that I need to go. In Ephesians 4:1 through 2, as a prisoner for the Lord, then I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have been received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. This tells me if I want to be a part of God's work, I've got to recognize my own brokenness, broken relationships with myself, God, and others. Our brokenness is real. Recognizing it will lead to healing us and frees us to be used by God. Philippians 1:6, be confident on this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it out on the completion until the day of Jesus Christ. So, it is by faith and grace that we are saved, but it is by our good works that God is glorified. So, at the end of the trip, little old Julie asked, did we get what we thought we would out of the trip? Yeah, my eyes were opened, but my heart was open and left too.
another half hour. Just kidding. And I brought my journal. Thank you, Trudy, for crying. But I brought my journal, gift of Drex, because I lost it the first year. So he made sure I wouldn't lose it this year. And yes, I wanted to talk about my journal too. But I wanted to say thank you, as everybody else did, for your gifts, your prayers. Sorry. Can you hear me now? I'm the closer. I'm closing today, and I'm going to show you where your money was spent. But most importantly, I want to show you how God used your money. So we left Vernal with $11,000. I feel really loud. Is that loud? All right. So with $11,000, let me break it down. Mark already told you about this motorcycle we bought for the EMT at the hospital. $950. I thought that was pretty sweet for a motorcycle. We also spent $1,700 on the HCM ambulance and the bus tires. There's the ambulance with the motorcycle. There's the bus. We spent $1,025 at HCM and Wholehearted to build picnic tables, shelves, and tables for the kindergarten, and they were being built. We spent $1,325 on 12 school benches, so I don't have a picture of that. $3,000 was mentioned on food distributions, the rice, beans, oil, when we fed 5 villages, 25 families on the campus at HCM, 3 orphanages for a total of 720 families. And that's not even including the children at the orphanages. We spent $1,800 to help build the wall, the Wholehearted orphanage wall. And we had $700 left over that we donated to Hope House. And we had several other love offerings we did as a group, like somebody needed to get her husband buried, and we paid for a roof on a church in the Village of Faith and the peanut butter. But I wanted to talk about my favorite thing is God's glory, and that was my highlight. And we came full circle from the beginning. I don't know how many of you knew, we were praying to have our fees waived on the second luggage because of all the donations we had. So we had been praying probably a month ahead of time, and sure enough, God showed up. We had all the fees taken care of, and they told us when we checked in at the airport, it would be at the discretion of the supervisor. So we specifically were praying for her. And I thought, as I was standing there in the airport, wow, God is already showing up and showing His glory. I can't wait to see what He's going to do for the rest of the week. And I only thought of that comment because of the end result, because of the money we saved with those baggage. It was $680 that we saved. We decided at the very last night for praise and worship, we wanted to give that money to Hope House Orphanage. And so we had 2 bags, 55-pound bags of rice that we had left over. We took those. We took a collection among us. We ended up giving Hope House $1,000 on Saturday night. Well, unbeknownst to me, or us, because Drex was talking to Eve Rose after she showed up during praise and worship, and afterwards she said, I just want to thank you for your donation because we had no food for lunch today. We fasted. So they went without lunch and ate spaghetti for dinner, and she said we were going to eat the leftovers for breakfast the next day, and we were done. We had no more food. So I thought how great that God answered our prayers, and we were able to share that. Through us, God showed His glory to Eve Rose and her children. And I thought, what the hand of God was definitely on that. I should say hands of God because His hands were perfect bookends from beginning to end of this trip. And then as I started thinking, where else was His glory shown? And it was so evident, as you've heard others speak, about how we were so blessed, and we saw the glory in the kisses of the children's. When they visited, they kissed our cheeks. We saw his glory on the unabashed worship at Hope House. We saw his glory when they're laying hands on us and praying, and we saw his glory singing in church in 2 separate languages, but praising the same God. And we saw his glory in a patient Haitian who knew no English, but we knew the same song, and he taught us how to sing a hymn in Haitian. And not only just taught it to us, he sang it over and over and over again with us. And so we were just, another thing I saw God's glory is just doing dishes, because the Haitian workers in the kitchen, once you start singing a hymn, they will join in. And it was just God's glory. So anyway, I came home asking God, what do I do with this? And like the others, I felt like I had it all going on, and I'm rich with all my possessions and stuff, but they are so much richer spiritually. And so I came home thinking, what am I going to do with this? What do I do? And I didn't realize I had already answered that question in my journal until I was reading Galatians. I just happened to finish Galatians last week. And I don't have my bifocals on, sorry, I got to get closer. Galatians in chapter 2, verse 9, Paul is talking about how the early church sent him and Barnabas out to preach to the Gentiles. And he was given just one reminder. He said, they only asked us, in verse 10 it says, they only asked us to remember the poor, the very thing I was zealous to do. Some translation says eager, but I love the word zealous because it's almost like I am going to work at not forgetting. So these words don't just apply to Paul and Barnabas, because we're all missionaries. We're all told to go out and preach the gospel. And so we're also told not to forget. And this is my last thought in my journal. It says, I am afraid of going back to normal. Forgetting. I don't want to forget the deaf orphanage or Hope House or Wholehearted orphanages. I don't want to forget. And so in my mind, after reading Galatians, that was God answering me. This is what you need to do, is not forget. And interesting enough, the parting words of the pastor at New Jerusalem Deaf Orphanage was, please don't forget us. So on behalf of the team, thank you again for your donations, your prayers, and for letting us represent the church. And we hope you join this team in not forgetting. Thank you.
Amen, church.